What's up, kiddos, and everybody watching? Glad you guys are back for this another Monday edition of the Children's Sermons. We're going to be diving right back into the gospel, and this week we're going to kind of wrap it up just a little bit. And for a recap, we've been over how powerful the gospel is. We've been over how the gospel doesn't discriminate between this person or that person, between how you talk or where you're from. The gospel doesn't discriminate because the working of God's power can work in all believers for Him. And this week, we're going to be talking about how we, as Christians, and how the message of the gospel collide to share it across the world. All right? So we're going to be talking about proclaiming or witnessing, or in simpler terms, in the simplest, sharing the gospel message. Now, when we were little bitty, our parents taught us that we need to share our toys with other people, and a lot of us were like, no, I want to keep this is mine. I don't want anybody else to have it. But when it comes to the gospel of Christ, we can't be like that, because the gospel is meant for everybody to hear it. It's not meant for somebody who's really, really smart to understand it and only give it to those others who are really smart. It's not really meant for those who aren't maybe as intelligent or as bright and can't really grasp a lot. It's meant for every person on the earth, all right? So the gospel is to be shared. And since the power of the gospel, that was what we talked about in the first week, since the power of the gospel comes from God's nature, its effectiveness isn't contingent or doesn't matter on us. Because of how powerful God is, the ability to share it, our ability doesn't matter. We can be the worst person with words. We can be the person that can't stand up in front of people and talk. Or we may not be the best listeners. But when it comes to the power of the gospel, that's why we went over the power of the gospel first, because it is so powerful that no matter what your ability set is, or what you can do as an individual, what you can do as a kid or as a teenager or as an adult, you can still share the gospel. It doesn't take somebody that's super smart or can speak really well or has a bunch of resources or has, a degree in the Bible and they've got all this fancy stuff that says, oh, I understand the Bible and I know everything there is to know about it. No, you don't need that to share the gospel, because God is the one who uses it through us, all right? He specializes in using unexpected people to accomplish what he would have them to accomplish, all right? It's a simple message. Paul, in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, that's where we're going to be at this afternoon. In 1 Corinthians chapter 2, it says, "And I, when I came to you, brothers, did not come proclaiming to you the testimony of God with lofty speech or wisdom." So Paul opens up this chapter after he's greeted the brothers in the church of Corinth. All right? He opens up and he says, I did not come to you guys with a bunch of fancy words about God. He says, I did not come with lofty speech, which means that he talked uppity and looked down at these people, or he didn't speak with words that would confuse them. He says, for I decided to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and Him crucified. Paul says, I didn't come to you with a whole bunch of deep thoughts or anything like this. I come to you with just pure gospel. And when it comes to telling people about who God is and about what Jesus Christ did, we don't need to get all deep and dark and into it. We need to, as Paul says here, with Jesus Christ and Him crucified and what Jesus did. In verse 3 it says, and I was with you in weakness and in fear and much trembling. Now this is a very key verse. If we are to talk about the gospel, if we are to share the power of the gospel, what the gospel can do for you and I, then we have to be able, all right, we have to be able to share with people in weakness and in fear and in much trembling. That means we got to get to know people. That's the only thing that we really got to do. Everything else, even that's contingent on God. God can make us that way. But we need to come to people and not look down at them, not say, well, I'm better than you because I'm a Christian. It doesn't work like that, guys. All right? He says, I was with you in weakness and in fear and much trembling. He says, I was with you. All right? As I was pouring this out to you, I was reliving what God did through me. The gospel of Jesus, and we went over this, I'm going to go over it again. The gospel of Jesus is what he did for us by dying on the cross and raising from the dead. And it's his whole story, and it's the story of our salvation. All right? Without that, we wouldn't have it. And that's what we are to share. It says the proof of the gospel is self-evident in the way that it transforms life. Okay? I love the movie Transformers. The cars, they turn into these huge robots, and all of a sudden they're saving the world from all sorts of bad guys and other evil Transformers and stuff like that. But when it comes to Christ, and actually I have the right shirt on for this if you guys can't see it, we are transformed when we come to Christ in the gospel. Now, we're not transformed from a car into a robot. We're transformed from an old sinful creature that we are into a creature that is becoming like Christ. Every day we strive more and more to become like Christ through the message of him. And what's the message of Christ? The gospel. That's how we become transformed. In verse 4 it says, "And my speech and my message were not in plausible words of wisdom, but in demonstration of the Spirit and of power." Once again, Paul says here, I didn't come to you with this big uppity thoughts that would confuse you. No, I come to you with demonstrations and with a show of who God is. My goal for my children's ministry with you guys and for anybody that hears me is that I would not confuse anyone, but that I would use terms that you would understand, that I would use terms that you could hold on to so that you know what I'm trying to teach you. And so that it wouldn't matter about what I said, but that you could find out what God would have for you to know. So that you wouldn't be confused by me, but that you would seek out wisdom in God. And that's what verse 5 says, okay? He says, so that your faith might not rest in the wisdom of men, but in the power of God. Now, we haven't talked very much about faith, and that might be where we go from here. But our faith is what we hold on to in Jesus Christ. We believe in what Christ has done, and we have faith in what he's going to do. All right? And our faith doesn't rest in anything I say or in anything that any other pastor says. It rests solely in God and in his word. All right? When we make God our primary focus, it's so much easier to, one, rely on our faith, and two, rely on him, because he longs for us to grow deeper and deeper in him. And the best way to do that is to share him with other people. We want people to enjoy good things in life, right? If you have an awesome piece of chocolate cake, now don't get me wrong, there's part of you that says, I want all of this cake for myself. But there's another part of you that says, man, everybody needs to have a piece of this cake. That's what it is with Jesus, all right? Everybody, when they come to experience who Jesus is, you don't turn back from that. When you truly experience what Jesus can do inside your life, that's not something you turn away from. When we state the truth, or when we state the gospel, because the gospel and truth are the same thing, we clearly and with clarity and confidence, all right? Sometimes I'm not very clear and you guys raise your hands and you're like, I don't understand what you're saying. Well, when we present the gospel with clarity and confidence, and we show the witness to the power of God, all right? We show what the power of God can do for us, and we tell them God can do amazing things in your life. Then we don't focus on anything in this world. We don't focus on the things of man and the craziness going around us. We focus on God. The gospel has the power to save us from our sins. The gospel has the power to unite us. It's the only thing in the world that can bring us together is the gospel. It's the only thing. And it's the only thing that keeps us together and continues to allow us to grow with one another. The gospel. All right? Now, next week, we're going to go into a practical application of how to get into the gospel. An application of how you guys as younger kids, and even if you're older, we'll get into that too, on how you can seek out the gospel in your own life. And how we can use that to change who we are. But this week, I want you guys to think. I know you guys are still kind of quarantined at home, but things are starting to pick back up, and we might be able to get back out and mingle with one another. How we can share the gospel message, how we can share the power, how we can share the glory, and how we can share our faith. All right. I'm going to ask a special prayer request for everybody watching this. I'm out of town working for this week and the upcoming weeks. I just ask you guys keep me in prayer as I'm doing this. And I love you guys, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. So have a good night. Bye.